Okay, let's get started, shall we? First, thank you everyone for joining us for today's CRM Contender series, HubSpot Sales Hub versus SugarCRM. And welcome. This will be a fun and informative session, but before we jump in, let me just cover a few housekeeping items. So in total, this will be a 60-minute, we'll take the full hour for this event. There will be a Q&A, a more formalized Q&A at the end of the presentation, but if you have questions throughout, feel free to drop them into the question box, and I will monitor that and ask the questions to today's presenters as we go. And then this event is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of both the slides and the webinar recording following this event. You'll likely see it in your inbox tomorrow morning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues and today's presenters to introduce themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Great introduction. Hi, everybody. My name's Megan Brooks. I'm an account executive over here at BrainSell, focusing on our CX stack, primarily focused on our CRM solutions. I also work with other solutions on the platform, such as marketing automation, support, so I have a really good understanding of kind of what that ecosystem should look like for organizations. I help a lot of our new customers come in and identify what is necessarily the best fit, whether that is staying with your current solution and optimizing those tools, or maybe a migration to a new, maybe more modern approach is needed. So kind of that consultative conversation here, primarily focused on that CX tech stack here, and I'll be talking to you a lot today about HubSpot, one of my favorite platforms, so excited to be here.
Great, thank you, Megan. I'm glad to have you here. And next up, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm Kevin Cook. I'm the Executive Vice President here at BrainSell. Been at BrainSell for 15 years, I think, and originally came to BrainSell to do sugar work. So I've got a lot of background in sugar. I used to be a developer a long time ago, so I've focused on kind of more technical implementations and sales. But these days, we work with lots of different tools at BrainSell, and I'll be talking about sugar today. But like Megan, we like to listen to the whole requirements list. We like to make sure that whatever tool fits best for you is the thing that we focus on. But today it's sugar and HubSpot, so I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful, thank you, Kevin. And so just to give you an idea of what we plan to cover today and the flow of the conversation, so we'll start by setting the stage and looking at the CRM market, the state of CRM today, and then taking a look at what are the key areas to consider when you're evaluating a new CRM solution, or maybe even evaluating the current CRM solution that you're utilizing to determine whether or not it still is a good fit for your company. And then Kevin and Megan will jump into doing a deeper dive into a comparison of two CRMs, so HubSpot Sales Hub and SugarCRM, SugarCell. And then we will wrap up with any audience questions that we haven't covered throughout the presentation. But before we dive in, we do have a couple of poll questions that will help us better understand where you are in your CRM journey today. So let me launch the first poll question, which is, which CRM are you currently using? And we have HubSpot on here, we have Sugar, we have Salesforce, maybe you're utilizing another one. There's a lot out there, as we'll learn when we jump into the presentation.
We can't vote.
What do you think is going to win out of this list?
I don't know.
I think
Salesforce, everybody knows about Salesforce, but man, HubSpot has been coming up. I see a lot of HubSpot out there.
Yeah, well, actually 43% of people with us today are utilizing Sugar, 14% on HubSpot, 29% are using a CRM that's not listed here, and then 14% are not using anything for CRM currently.
Wow, no CRM, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so for those utilizing a CRM, how would you describe that relationship that you have with your current CRM tool?
That's funny. I like your I like the selections.
We try and keep it light over here, Kevin.
Yeah. In it for the long haul, whether you like it or not.
All right, and it looks like people are responding. So we have, let's see here. We have 17% are happily married and in it for the long haul. 33% have had some rocky moments, but they're committed to trying to work it out. And 50%, let's just say they're exploring other options, but we won't tell their CRM tool that. All right, so I'm going to transition it over to you, Megan and Kevin, to get started.
Yeah, and I think this, before jumping into point solutions where we start talking about HubSpot and Sugar, I think it's very important to recognize the space that we're speaking about and how vast it is. And this quadrant that you see on the right is very overwhelming when you start thinking about, okay, maybe I am exploring these different options. Where should I be exploring? You can take a look at Magic Quadrants, you can take a look at Forrester reports, things like that. But truly, at the end of the day, all of these solutions are going to match what you're needing at a certain level. It's about the details and the requirements that you need based on your people, your processes, your data structure here. But it's very clear how large this space is going, and you'll see why in the next slide. But truly, what's so important to think about is if you're not already using one, looking at this image, it's just daunting to see all of the different options you have out there. Do I want a standalone? Do I want a platform? Is this going to sustain my growth goals in the next, 2, 3, 5, 10 years? So we want to make sure that you understand that we understand this market and understand that, if you slap a piece of technology onto something, it likely isn't going to give you the results you're looking for. Kevin, anything else to add here?
Well, the thing that surprises me or shocks me is that in our poll, we saw so many people that weren't using a CRM, and yet you look at this chart and there's just so many out there. And look at the value of this market, $85 billion in just 2 years.
Yeah, and I think,
but still people are not using a CRM. So
they're not using them. And then also what we found, and I'm just looking here at a note too, there's over 600 CRMs and only 19% of those are rated over 3 stars, which is insane. So, you can narrow it down that way by reviews, but the value of it, as you can see here, is people are seeing a huge ROI. That's the reason why this market is growing so intense. And I know, Kevin, you have a pretty remarkable customer story too, where they saw direct ROI by adopting and implementing CRM.
Yeah, this was a couple of years ago, but this customer was using, I can't remember the name, it's an old technology, but it's effectively just file management. They're just managing files and PDFs for each customer. And actually, they would compile it into a PDF once a week to review their sales. They worked out the ROI for adopting a CRM system. And just based on the amount of time saved, the number of users, number of employees, and our average hourly cost, they estimated over $400,000 in savings based on efficiency alone. And that shocked me. Those were their numbers, not mine. And then if you roll in things like not just efficiency, but even lost sales. So, ask yourself, with a CRM, can I get 1 more sale or 2 more sales a month? And the value is huge. Yeah.
Right. And not only losing, new business sales, but also if we're looking at point 2 here and we're talking about churn, I think about churn in 2 ways. It's customer churn and employee churn. So of course, having a CRM will help you manage your customer base a lot easier. You're going to be able to set up certain tasks. You're going to be able to have that automation piece where they're always feeling like they're getting that white glove service from you. But when I think about employee churn too, people need to have the tools to be successful. And if you implement a tool that helps make their life easier, imagine how happy your employees are going to be too. And we all know hiring is very expensive. So if we can keep our customers happy and our employees happy, we've reduced churn already with a simple solution.
Exactly right. I've got kids, and a couple of them are out in the marketplace, and they say the same thing. Not necessarily with regard to CRM, but with technology. They want to they won't consider companies that are just using old tech. They want modern tech. They want it to be easy. And part of that is they're dedicated to do the job. They want to be able to do the job well. And to do the job well, you need good tools.
100%. And that comes with the smarter selling piece. You know, what can we do to enable our sales team to do their job better without spending? I think there was a statistic, and I might just be pulling this out of thin air, but I've certainly heard it somewhere, that salespeople are spending less than 50% of their time actually selling because they're doing a ton of manual things. Or project management, they're dealing with customers that maybe they, you know, account executives are dealing with customers that they've had a long time ago. You know, these are the types of things that we can push to the side when we use a proper CRM that fits the people's requirements.
Administrative tasks. But you know, number 6, before you leave the slide, Sarah, number 6 is another. Maybe number 6 should have been number 1, because part of that ROI is the data. And what's that saying somebody coined a few years ago? Data is the new oil. And so every opportunity every customer I'm talking to these days is concerned about analytics and data. And what that does is it allows them to make really important decisions based on data, not just in the CRM, but from multiple sources. We've heard AI and all sorts of other modern technologies, but they still all center around the data. So looking at the data and being able to make business decisions based on good data is really big. So that accessibility to the data actually returns a better ROI. Would you agree, Megan?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think data is king, especially these days, and we're moving into, you know, economic uncertainty. We have to understand, where do we want to be investing our dollars to continue to thrive in a potential downfall in our economy. So what can we do to enhance customer experience, to bring in newer business? We have to understand what is selling, why is it selling, who are those personas, and all of that data can be extrapolated from a tool like a CRM.
Yeah, if you're looking at leads dropping off, that's a trailing indicator of sales. When your leads aren't, you don't have a lead. So if you've got good KPIs, it'll give you predictive or leading indications, not trailing indications. That kind of data is worth a lot.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest areas, now that we're focusing on this slide, that's one of the biggest areas we need to talk about is, what does your current state processes look like? That's where we always start here at BrainSell. It's not always going straight to the point solution here. While it might seem glaringly obvious, taking a step back and understanding your current state with your team structure. How are your processes currently working inside of multiple systems, not just sales and marketing, but also service delivery? We talk a lot in the HubSpot world about this flywheel of engage, attract, and delight, which is a constant wheel that's always spinning. So we need to understand what that current state looks like with your customer, the customer journey, understand what those key objectives are when you're looking to implement a tool. What are you looking to get out of it? Is it efficiency? Is it data visibility? Is it all of those things packaged into one? This is something that I think differentiates us as a growth enablement company, is we really take a deep dive into all of these points here to make sure that the technology that we recommend is going to get you to where you want to be in terms of your goals, your initiatives, that corporate objective that you might be thinking about. You know, we want to talk about how are all of these tools going to work together to create those efficiencies.
Yeah, we're talking about 2 really great CRM tools today, but you know, what's the saying we always use here, Megan? People and process. It's people and process, people and process. That's the first thing. So yeah, the technology is important, but a company is going to succeed or fail based on people and process first. Now, you may need a certain technology. There may be something that only one piece of technology offers for your particular business. But in general, it's the people and the process first. And success or failure is not going to be dependent on an individual piece of technology.
100%. And it's all about, you know, that change management piece that is so valuable. Humans are, in general, adverse to change. We don't necessarily like that. It makes us feel uncomfortable. So when we start thinking about making these really large investments, we need to make sure that we're evaluating all of these key areas. Like the third from the bottom point on the right-hand side, flexibility and agility to scale. That is so important when you're thinking about, I was just speaking to a customer or a prospect of mine who's looking to become a $1 billion company in 5 years. They are looking to me and to the BrainSell team to help provide them a CRM recommendation that's going to allow them to scale that aggressively in the next 5 years. So that piece is probably one of the most important pieces, is how big is your team looking to grow? How are you going to onboard those individuals? Who's going to own this initiative if we're looking to grow that aggressively in such a small amount of time, which is an anomaly, I will say. I don't really hear a lot of that all the time, but it's a valid point, an extreme one, but definitely something to consider.
I'm hearing that more though. Hearing that more. We got to be able to scale. You know, today we're here, but you know, in 5 years we want to be there, and we don't want to make a bad decision now. That's again why patting ourselves on the back. It's important to have BrainSell in your corner, because we can help you avoid those long-term errors. Making a decision is going to have an effect in 5 years, a bad effect. You want to avoid that. We're good at that.
All about risk mitigation.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the kind of setting the stage here, Megan and Kevin. So let's jump in and actually take a look at the 2 platforms that we're focused on today.
Oh, look at that.
Kick us off talking about the HubSpot platform. So like Sarah had mentioned, we're really going to be focusing on the sales tools when it comes to these platforms, but it would behoove us to not mention what truly comes out of working with these organizations, or these vendors, I should say. So with HubSpot and Sugar, which Kevin will dive into a little bit more, you're going to have tools that will support all the way through that flywheel I had mentioned. So Marketing Hub to help attract those customers. HubSpot was the creator of inbound methodology to get people to your website to start converting leads, people raising their hands. Marketing Hub helps enable a lot of those individuals to easily get access to your sales team, so you can have faster velocity deals. And that way you're getting more referral leads, you're going to have those more raving fans by leveraging a lot of those automations, workflows, your landing pages, your blogs, stuff like that. That's what will come out of a Marketing Hub. Sales Hub, which is something that we'll be highlighting a lot throughout this entire presentation, that's your core CRM functionality. So that's where you're managing your contacts, your companies, your deals. You'll have pipelines that you'll be moving all of these deals through different phases. You can have multiple pipelines. There's so many things that you can do. Email automation for sales teams to nurture those accounts that have maybe either taken a step back, or those who had relationships. Customer success teams, for example, want to keep in touch with those customers, say on like a quarterly basis. Things like that are things that Sales Hub can help with, among with different analytics and reports that just come straight out of the box. And then that Service Hub piece, that's where you're going to come with, you know, your ticketing, your onboarding. Someone's having an issue. We see this a lot with IT and IT services. You have an issue, you submit a ticket. That can all be connected into this one platform. And then we talk about CMS, that's your website build, where you can actually migrate your entire website into HubSpot and manage all of your landing pages, your home pages, pretty much everything inside of HubSpot. And then you have Operations Hub, which is helping with data cleanliness. You can do more complex integrations, more complex reporting, and things of that nature. So the platform here is, I see a lot of people who are running their entire enterprise businesses on HubSpot, which is really cool to see. But we'll take a step back and only focus on that middle one, Sales Hub, because it's a lot to digest. So we'll take one bite at a time here.
Yeah, and we're talking about platforms, and I think it's important to point out that both HubSpot and Sugar could be a point solution or a platform solution. And that goes back to our previous discussion, which is right. A lot of customers just don't know, do I want a point solution for just my sales team, or do I want a platform that incorporates marketing and sales and service? You may have heard the best of breed approach. Maybe I want the best of breed point solutions. I'm going to have the very best marketing tool. I'm going to have the very best CRM, and I'm going to have the very best customer support tool, or some mix. There's part of the consideration is, do I want platform or best of breed, point solution or platform? But both of these could be either one. Also, another important thing to note here is you're seeing Sugar, you got HubSpot and Sugar both have marketing, support, and sales. But HubSpot has CMS and operations that really aren't part of the Sugar platform. So that's another consideration. There may be a platform play for a larger platform, and that might help people make a choice.
Yeah, totally. It's totally up to what you're looking for. And here in this slide, we'll see the feature overview. There's way more differences to this. Don't think that this is an exhaustive list. What we had done here is pulled what we feel and what we hear is most important when people are considering a solution. So what we're going to do is talk about these one by one and kind of go down the list in terms of what the deployment looks like, your minimum license count, all the way down that way. And we'll start by going HubSpot Sugar, just so that's very clear. So here we'll talk a little bit about deployment. So HubSpot is a fully cloud solution. So what that means is you're going to access it by your browser, essentially. Everything's going to live inside of a cloud. You'll have, the ability to do single sign-on if your company requires that, but you can also just sign in as regular with 2FA. Pretty normal deployment when you think about a cloud solution. And I know, Kevin, you can speak to Sugar being pretty similar, but there's a little difference there too.
Yeah, the deployment or your licensing model, people may talk about the licensing, but both Sugar and HubSpot are SaaS products, and they're both served up to you in the browser. The one difference, this is pretty unique to Sugar. Sugar's always had this capability. If you buy a license of Sugar, you can install it locally. I mean, on the computer under your desk, if you like. I've built it on little laptops. You can install Sugar on a laptop and run it off your internal computer on premises, or your own hosting environment. You can have an Amazon environment and host it there, private cloud, wherever. BrainSell even offers private cloud hosting. So you can take your Sugar licenses and host them yourself. That's a unique feature of Sugar. And that means that some customers who may have security concerns or they want certain compliance requirements to be met, they choose to host it privately so they can meet those compliance requirements. So that's a unique thing for Sugar.
We can talk about that further on additional call, what might be the best fit for you. I would say, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, 9 times out of 10 people are really happy with a cloud solution.
Oh yeah, it isn't. It used to be very common. Sugar was initially released back in 2004, and it used to be really common for people to put it on-prem because that's the way people did it back then. In fact, I remember they used to sell, it's called the Sugar Cube. They would actually sell the hardware. You get the computer with Sugar installed. That was early. But nowadays, yeah, everybody's in the vendor clouds, whether it's Sugar or HubSpot or Salesforce or Microsoft, whatever. It's the vendor cloud, usually.
Awesome. We'll talk a little bit about, yeah, and then we can talk about minimum licenses. So here, just a disclaimer, when we're comparing HubSpot and Sugar here, we're talking about the professional and the enterprise version. So that's the mid and high tier. We see probably 85 to 90% of our customers fitting in these tiers. So that's all you'll see here, but I'll speak a little bit about the HubSpot minimums. So for the professional tier, it's a minimum 5 paid users. Usually people, Salesforces will have this. In terms of their staffing, they will have minimum 5 users, and then you can always add on for additional user costs. But what HubSpot also offers are free users. So you can actually have these 5 paid users as your sales team, and maybe you want your operations folks to also be within the CRM to kind of just see what's going on. They wouldn't have the ability to do a lot of the sales functions, but they're able to actually be inside of your portal, and you can have unlimited free users. Something really cool with HubSpot too is you could go on HubSpot right now and create your own free account and start playing around with it. You're only going to have access to all of the free tools across all 5 hubs, but it's enough to kind of get you familiar with the user interface and how everything is related. There's also a starter package that's 1 tier below professional. Most people don't typically fall into this, but it's a minimum 2 users, so I feel, I can throw that out there. But for now, we see most people needing the professional version. You're going to get the most return on your investment with at least professional. So that's why we put the minimum as 5 paid users here, because that's likely the category you'll fall into.
Right. And Sugar has minimum users for their Sugar Cell Essentials is what they call it. 3 users. But you know, the thing is with all these vendors, I guess that it's negotiable. If you had a really good use case and you asked nicely, I suspect most vendors are going to be able to negotiate with you. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got 1 or 2 users, you know, maybe these are not the right tools for you. So the minimum users, I would say, or minimum license count, it's important to note. Don't make it a deal killer, but also be realistic that if you need to use 1, 2, 3, or 4 licenses, maybe these aren't the right fits for you. You mentioned the free users. Sugar does not have the same kind of free user or free license, but they do have what's called open source. They used to be an open source product, and you can still get the open source code for Sugar. So you can get the free Sugar code, but that's old stuff, and most people don't want that. Most people want a paid and supported license. So that's another difference between HubSpot and Sugar. Sugar does not give you free licensing, but they do have that older version where you can get the code yourself. But I'd say for most companies, that's not really appropriate.
Yeah, seems a little too over my head when it comes down to the techie side of things. As soon as you say code, it's whoop.
Yeah, people don't want to install it and run it themselves.
Right. Definitely. And the third point here, email integration, we actually have its own slide to talk about this because we understand how important it is to have your Gmail or your Outlook connected to your CRM, because most people live inside their email. So we won't dive too much into this right now because we have a whole slide dedicated to it, but know that HubSpot and Sugar both have Gmail and Outlook integration. So whatever email provider you're using.
Table stakes these days. You got to have your email and calendaring connected. Yeah.
That fourth piece here, reporting. Both HubSpot and Sugar have great reporting. I can speak to HubSpot's a little bit more, where we again have a dedicated slide to this where we go into more detail about analytics, reporting, and forecasting. But here, when we speak about reporting and analytics, HubSpot has a lot of really awesome out-of-the-box dashboards and reports. They do have some minimums, which we'll talk about towards the end as well. One of them is up to 500 custom reports on the highest tier there. Unless you're doing a lot of data stuff, I think that should be a fine maximum to have. But we do just have the standard reporting, like lead conversion, deal stage, average sales price, things like that you'll likely want in terms of KPIs. But there are some custom reports that we can build as well. And they're actually pretty easy to build, considering the UI across the platform is really consistent, which we'll talk at the bottom, right above the scalability for growth.
Yeah, and same with Sugar. They've got standard reporting, what they call advanced reporting. And advanced reporting is a unique thing, lets you write SQL statements. And that's really, you know, there's probably 3 people on the planet who really want to do that, but it is there. And that's kind of another unique thing inside Sugar. And it goes back to its roots of being, you know, kind of a techie open source tool, but they've maintained that. Now that they're more professional and polished, they still maintain the ability to use what they call advanced reporting. You can have unlimited reports, build your own reports. I tend to agree with you that the interface for building reports is a little bit nicer in HubSpot, but Sugar gives you a lot of power in reporting. And then they've got advanced forecasting, which is the next line. And I think that's a really unique thing that you're going to see in the Sugar platform. And I'll just jump forward by a line. Sugar's advanced reporting is rare that it allows you to do what I call rates of rates, or trends among rates. So you can see, you know, your sales rate, or what's your sales trend. That's one thing, you know, am I selling fast or slow? But Sugar lets you say, okay, how has my win rate changed over time? Or how is my win rate changing over time by cohort? You know, my enterprise sales, do they get better in the summer or slower in the summer? My corporate sales, you know, all the various cohorts that you can define over time, and how do their win rates change, for example. So rates of rates, or trends among your rates, is something that Sugar advanced forecasting, I think, is pretty unique. But HubSpot also has their own forecasting tool, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's very similar. I don't know if it's necessarily as detailed as rates of rates, which is really a cool feature that Sugar has. But there are things like snapshots that we can do where you can understand a certain period of time what has happened within your sales analytics, and that could be across all of them, whether it is type of sale, whether it is deals that move back in the pipeline. We can take snapshots as to what's happening in that timeline. So it seems pretty similar. Another key point that we can also do here, and I know Sugar also has this capability, is default and custom forecasting as it pertains to your pipeline stage. I know that's something that we also use here internally at BrainSell, which is really interesting, where you can see, you know, when it's at the qualification stage, we have maybe a 10% chance of it closing. But when we get all the way down to the quoting or final negotiation stage, that percentage goes up to 75% chance of it closing. And that can be an out of the box. I know HubSpot comes out of the box with a standard pipeline forecast, but you can also edit that based off of data that you've seen in the past. So we can start doing some forecasting essentially right outside the gate here.
Right.
We also have more custom forecasting that we can pull in, calculated properties and things of that nature, but I won't get too in the weeds with all those features.
Yeah, what it boils down to is Sugar and HubSpot both have reporting and analytics. We're kind of distinguishing between, you know, a report that says what were my sales this month, as opposed to analytics, which helps you make those business decisions, like we talked about on slide 2 or 3. The analytics allows you to make good business decisions, which increases the ROI of your implementation or CRM.
And moving into kind of, well, who would be managing these systems? How can we best equip our team to be able to scale and be flexible? And I would say HubSpot has one of, if not the best user interface that is consistent across the entire platform. And that's all the way down into the back end. Very intuitive. You could be on a deal record and hit the settings gear on the top right corner, and it's going to bring you into the deals portion of the settings. So you can start to do pipeline management, automation, change things. Of course, there are permissions. Unless you're an administrator, you can't make those system-wide changes. But the key here is there's a consistent UI across the platform and an actual dedicated administrator up until a certain point. There's always a need for it at some point, but up until a certain point, you don't need to hire a full administrator to manage your CRM. Unlike Salesforce, where you typically have to have an admin to run any changes by, I would say HubSpot and Sugar, you can have someone in-house managing this, whether it's a sales director or someone on the leadership team managing your CRM to make those fast changes without having to wait on an admin to do those things.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sugar and HubSpot are both very user-friendly and easy to maintain. You don't have to hire somebody. Now, we offer this as a service here, but it doesn't, it's because a lot of companies want to hire an admin, but you don't have to hire an admin. It's an important distinction. With, you know, the Salesforce and the Microsofts of the world, they actually have people on staff who are admins of the CRM. Sugar and HubSpot, you don't have to. It's easy to maintain by a power user. And power user, I mean somebody who knows the business. You know, if you've got a business leader, a sales leader who knows how to use Excel, that's the kind of power user. That person is probably also going to be able to administer Sugar and or HubSpot. Now, I am biased. I think HubSpot, I mean, I think Sugar is easier to maintain, but that's just me.
Yeah, all that exposure, I think, have probably makes me feel that way. But when I get into some of the reporting tools, I'm like, well, I'm calling Sarah or I'm calling somebody else to help me there. But
it also goes back to one of those earlier checkboxes we had, you know, the ease of use. And that's going to be personal preference. So, you know, one person may say HubSpot's easier, another person may say Sugar's easier. Doesn't mean one's right or wrong. It comes down to that ease of use, which is personal preference.
100%, yeah. And moving into this last point here before we get into our key differentiators here, because both of these platforms are platforms, the scalability for growth is very high. I mean, there you can continue to easily upgrade to add more advanced features as you continue to grow your organization. The tools are going to be able to grow with you. They both have add-ons like marketing and service. So you'll be able to essentially have an ecosystem of your data across the entire flywheel, like I mentioned before. So the scalability is really high with these platforms. So it's a great investment when they are a good fit for you to continue to grow with the platform.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Yeah. Now, this is another interesting distinction here. Tell us about the ecosystem around HubSpot.
So the ecosystem with HubSpot is huge and it's growing every single day. So when we talk about integration ecosystem, these are applications that are out of the box designed to connect to the CRM or the platform. So when I say that, when people are using, say, QuickBooks Online, that's a really popular accounting tool that individuals are using. And most of the time, these tools are completely segregated from the sales team. So what that means is salespeople are likely going from CRM to QuickBooks to process sales orders, invoices, whatever that process looks like. HubSpot has actually created, or HubSpot or the actual vendor on the other side, in this case, potentially QuickBooks, has created a connection where we can actually streamline a lot of those processes. So you have an integration that will help make your entire process a lot more optimized.
Right.
And you can do the same with other tools. A lot of people do it with Salesforce, for example. If they're using Salesforce as their CRM and they want a really powerful marketing automation tool and they choose HubSpot, there's an out-of-the-box integration between HubSpot and Salesforce that you essentially just turn on and start configuring without the need for custom coding or any custom API connections.
Right. Yeah, and you know the Sugar ecosystem isn't as big as HubSpot, really, but some people would say it is actually maybe bigger because, back to Sugar's history, they had that open source idea and anybody could develop against it. So there probably are thousands of Sugar add-ons or Sugar customizations, out there, but that doesn't mean they're all really viable because, literally, I once talked to a customer a few years ago whose son in the basement in high school was writing Sugar code for him, and you could do that. You could do that. So in the Sugar world, I'd say the environment or the ecosystem of really good solid add-ons is much smaller than HubSpot. But you did identify such an important thing, the ability to go out and grab some integration or some, like you see on the slide here, 8x8, a VoIP integration, a VoIP connection. So Sugar does have good connectors, maybe not as many as HubSpot, but they've got a good ecosystem. And at some point, you got to say, 1,000 or 100, I got all I need.
Right, exactly. And I think what's really cool about HubSpot's ecosystem, before we jump into email stuff, is they actually incentivize other vendors to create those plugins. So they're constantly investing in their ecosystem so people can have that unified place, that unified workflow. So that's what's so interesting about the way that they work, is they've actually reached out to vendors like Aircall, for example, and have invested in the platform and worked together to build an IP that has a seamless integration for their telephony solutions. So it's really cool to see how they interact with their individuals. And this is obviously the key integration everyone wants to know, is how is my tool going to interact with either Gmail or Outlook, which is how I'm most of the time communicating with my customers. I believe there's a crazy statistic out there that like over 65% of individuals want to be contacted via email than any other channel. So it's so important for us to have a really strong connection, especially those of us who are living inside of our Outlook, inside of our Gmail, our calendars. So to expand on the HubSpot integration, you can see a small screenshot here of the Gmail piece, and we can demonstrate this on an additional conversation. But what you'll see when you're in there is when you turn this integration on, it takes about 5 minutes to do it, maybe less than that. What you're going to be able to do is automatically archive emails. And when that email is archived, it's going to show up on an activity stream inside of the CRM. So no matter what conversations you're having with your prospects and customers, that activity is going to be logged in the CRM. So anyone can go in and understand where the current state is of that account.
Yeah.
Another cool piece of this is you can automatically create contacts. If this person doesn't already live inside your CRM, you have an inbound lead, you can go ahead and hit create contact from right here in your email, and it's going to generate a contact inside of HubSpot for you. You'll also be able to see any associated companies to the contact, associated deals, associated tickets, any of those additional standard and custom objects that you may have created inside of HubSpot. You actually have that full visibility with this email integration. The other piece of it also is your calendar. So HubSpot gives you the ability to integrate your calendar, and it creates a scheduling link. So someone's trying to book time with you, you can actually keep the scheduling link hosted on your website. At my company prior to BrainSell, that's what they did, and I got demos booked for me just using my HubSpot link. You can also have it in your email signature block for people to schedule time. Just a lot better than that back and forth. I'm available EST versus PST versus CST versus some Arizona time zone that I can never get straight. So it's just a lot easier for people to understand that availability there. But I know Kevin, Sugar's got a pretty extensive integration as well.
Yeah, as I said earlier, integration with your email or calendaring, whether it's Microsoft or Google or something else even, that's table stakes. Everybody's got to have them, and Sugar and HubSpot both have it. Sugar a few years ago, though, did release a second connection or second integration. They've actually got two, but they're focusing on the second one that they released because it gives a ton more capability. It allows you to, everything you said there, you can edit records, whether it's an opportunity or a contact or an account. You can edit those records right inside Outlook, for example, whether it's desktop or browser. You can address the custom fields and custom entities inside Sugar through the connection in Outlook, browser or desktop, or Gmail, G Suite. But you can also leverage like email monitoring, email templates from this plugin. So you can create email templates like marketing templates that the salesperson can send out while they're in Outlook or G Suite using the Sugar plugin. So they made some huge improvements 3-4 years ago in their connectivity. And like you said, it also works not just with email, but also with the calendar. So there's a lot of capability there. I use it every day. We're in both CRM and Sugar and in Outlook, and I just use the connection every day, all the time. It's also important the way you get it set up, because I've got Outlook feeding into our instance of Sugar, but because I use Outlook on my phone and I use Outlook in lots of other places, I can be making updates to contacts on my cell phone. I don't need to use a mobile app. I could be using it, but I just do that inside Outlook because of that connector. So it gives us, whether it's HubSpot or Sugar, that kind of connection gives you a lot of opportunity.
And I don't know if that transition was intentional, Kevin, but that was cool. So good job. Yeah, to talk about the mobile app, because a lot of organizations have field sales teams, and now that we're finally kind of out of the woods with the pandemic, I know I've been encouraged to travel a lot more to be able to see my customers in person, and you know that makes a huge difference here. And instead of having to pull up a hotspot on my phone to then open up my laptop, I'm in my car. This is just so much easier to have the mobile app available to you. So HubSpot's actually done a ton of improvement on their mobile apps as of late, to the point where they actually have created their own HubSpot keyboard, which is really interesting, where you can start to create and send attachments from the mobile app from the HubSpot keyboard. I know a lot of individuals I've worked with in maybe the manufacturing space. I've also done like commercial cleaners. They want to be able to take pictures and take notes of the space that they're evaluating. The HubSpot app actually allows you to quickly upload those pictures. They have voice to text. So if you're taking notes and having a conversation with someone, you can actually turn on your voice to text instead of having to type with your head down while speaking with these individuals. You can do it that way. And then you obviously have access to your standard objects, contacts, companies, deals. You can see here that you'll also be able to see your reports. you're pretty much able to access everything from your HubSpot app. And what's really cool about this is if you're getting a phone call and HubSpot's app recognizes the phone number, you'll actually see the caller ID information of that person from your HubSpot CRM and be able to pull up that contact record right away. So for field sales individuals, the HubSpot app is really, really valuable. That way you're not having to use your data to open up your laptop to plug something quickly into the CRM to then send it over to a team member. It's a great collaboration tool.
Yeah, the Sugar also mobile app. Like you said, you can do all your reporting. You can see your reports. You can see the context, all the details. Send text messages, place phone calls, and have those automatically logged. The voice to text, speech to text, same thing inside Sugar. Again, I think all these are table stakes. One thing I do like about the Sugar app, I don't know if this is the same in HubSpot. We're not getting into the deep administrative capabilities of Sugar, but with Sugar's Sugar Studio, you can actually change the layouts of your desktop tool, but you can also change the layouts of your mobile tool. So Sugar's mobile app you're allowed to change the layouts of the mobile tool, just like you can change the layouts of the desktop. So Sugar extends that mobile capability, the administration of the mobile capability, into its studio, which is, I think, a nice feature.
That is a really cool feature. I don't think HubSpot has that feature, so that's a really good differentiator. Great, and I know we've got about 14 minutes.
You know, we're talking too much.
I know. I want to make sure we have time for questions, so I think we should hit on the key points here when we're talking about automation and guided selling. So I'll speak to the HubSpot piece here. The automation across the CRM is so easy to set up and so powerful. So outside of just email automation with sequences, which is a sequence of emails, calls, tasks, things like that, that is automatically set up and gives notifications to individuals that the sequence applies to internally. That's the one piece of the automation. There's also pipeline automation. So say you just closed an opportunity and your standard process is to send out a thank you email with next steps. We can actually automate that completely. So when the deal goes closed won, that email goes out and that took away that manual process that you were looking for. There's multiple other automations that we can think of when it comes to sales stuff, but the key here is sequences, pipeline automation, task automation, following up with individuals. This just helps things not fall through the cracks. And another piece of it is their playbooks. So we're talking about guided selling. What are the resources we can bring to the table for our sales team so they feel comfortable taking that next step with the customer or prospect? And that's where playbooks come into play. So individuals, whether it's a partner or the internal sales team, sales leadership wants to create these playbooks, you can host them inside of your CRM so sales teams can actively update contact records while they're on the phone, guide their selling to make sure that they're asking all the questions that you need them to ask. The playbooks are very dynamic, and you can have up to, I believe, 10 of them, and then purchase more if you want more playbooks, depending on all of your standard operating processes.
Yeah, Sugar, similar sort of thing. They've got guided selling, and you can see here the green arrows. Each column there indicates a phase in your template. So the guided selling inside Sugar is a way to create a templated engagement, and it could be the way you engage with a person or a company or an opportunity. And for example, a company could have multiple types of guided selling journeys. So you can say, this is here's my template for my annual account planner for this company, but also because they're a manufacturer, we've got a second template for engaging with manufacturers. You can do the same thing with people and opportunities. Pretty much any record or any entity inside Sugar you can apply this guided selling template, these templates to. And you create the templates, you have an unlimited number of templates, and then build them into any record there. The thing that I really like here is that, of course, it'll automatically create activities for you based on your template or your milestones in that template. So you can automate it, but if you combine it with Sugar's process definitions, that I think is a fantastic automation tool, the back end of Sugar. If you combine that process automation or process definitions with the guided selling, there's a ton of capability for automation and management of automation. And then it's one of my favorite features in Sugar is seeing a list of the guided selling stages. So where are we as we approach each opportunity? What stage is it? How's it progressing? Is it fast or slow? What's the momentum? Are we on track or off track? What's the next step? You can see that in a dashboard. So I think that's a really cool feature of Sugar. We could, with both these tools, we could spend hours getting into the details here.
Exactly. And I think you just did another flawless transition there, Kevin, where we're talking about deal progression, because that's one of the key analytics features on the sales analytics piece for HubSpot is, you know, where are the deals sitting in the pipeline? How long have they been sitting there? We can actually see if the deal has regressed actually in the pipeline. So if you got all the way to the quote phase and now we're putting it back into discovery, what happened there? And that's, you know, one of the key outcomes that we can start tracking with HubSpot outside of, you know, what happened with the call at the end of the day. We can actually pull reports on this for sales leaders, coaching, things like that. We can also do a lot of around the deal, overall deal change history. We can also do a lot about how the lead came in, referral source. We can talk a lot about the forecasting. We can talk a lot about weighted categories. We can talk a lot about win rates that we had talked about. So those snapshots over time. There's so many different analytics and out-of-the-box reports, and then those custom reports that we can start to create based on custom properties that are very specific to you and your organization. All of these things can be accomplished with HubSpot's out-of-the-box reporting tool. And like we had mentioned, that UI is very consistent across the board. So you're not going to get into this kind of scary, almost older coding computer type of user interface. It's going to have that same bubbly, inviting, colorful approach that you see here on the screenshot, even when you get into the back end piece of the report builder.
This is the trends, the rates of rates I was talking about earlier. And I know we got to get to our Q&A, but this is one of the things that I think is super unique about Sugar. You can see an example of the dashboard here that shows you your win rate trend. So over time, each line there, the purple, the green one, the yellow one, blue one, those indicate your cohorts. So enterprise sales, Latin American, say LATAM or EMEA, whatever, over time, how do they change? How's their win rate change over time? And if you're not thinking about it, what that does is says, okay, it dropped here. Why? So you can go look at the details. It's hard to read that chart. You can see where did it drop and go back and look at my data and figure out why it dropped. That allows you to address internal problems or even external problems. So I wish we could spend more time on this. This is a really cool capability of Sugar, but we don't have that time luxury right now, do we?
Right, we just get so excited about it. And pricing, we don't have to spend too much time here. The pricing is what it is. Unfortunately, there's not too much that we can do at BrainSell here, but you know, we can be helpful influencer partners when we start talking about minimum seats pricing. Of course, a lot of these vendors like to incentivize their customers and prospects at certain milestones throughout the year. So we can always talk a little bit more about pricing. So feel free to take a screenshot of that. All of these are also available on both Sugar and HubSpot's pricing pages. They make it very transparent as to what you're looking for, the features and the pricing of each of these hubs, one might say, or one of the platform pieces.
And as the marketer here, they're on the pricing pages on our website as well.
There we go. Yeah, sorry, I should push the BrainSell.
This isn't something secret. It's all available out in the world.
Right.
So right fit, wrong fit. Right fit, wrong fit. You go first. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, so we always love to harp on the negative stuff. So let's start with wrong fit. It's very important to disqualify very quickly. No one wants to waste their time. So when we're talking about wrong fit, HubSpot Sales Hub is built for small to medium-sized businesses as it stands today. HubSpot's constantly making more improvements to start accommodating more large enterprise, and we're actually seeing that shift. However, to be safe, we're saying wrong fit is any organization over 2,000 employees is not going to be a good fit for HubSpot. You're going to need something a little bit more sophisticated with more association capabilities, for example, which we can always talk about. Another piece too is any type of regulated data, such as HIPAA data, that's not going to be able to fit inside the CRM. It is not HIPAA compliant. You're also not able to keep social security numbers, credit card information, things like that. It's just not set up that way. And I think actually illegal to keep any of that stuff inside of the HubSpot platform.
Yeah, sure, same thing. Probably not good for compliance, although because you can host it yourself, if you really wanted to. And I do have a couple of customers doing this, host it internally, and you can make your internal instance compliant. I think one of the differentiators here is Sugar. Sugar actually has some huge customers, huge customers. I've sold Sugar. I've sold literally thousands of licenses of Sugar to large organizations. They've got one customer, over 70,000 users. So the Sugar can play in the enterprise space. It's not the perception, but it can play in the enterprise space pretty well.
And the other piece too for HubSpot is any super complex organizational or data needs. And we can talk about what that means because it's different for every organization. But any complex object relationships, meaning associations, we need multiple people, multiple types of individuals or types of companies associated to one type of deal. HubSpot right now isn't necessarily set up for that. We're working towards it to kind of replicate what Salesforce has been doing. But right now it's just not a great fit. And then speaking about compliant data, it's usually insurance, healthcare, financial industries usually aren't great fits because they have that sensitive data. But other than that, it's a great fit.
And that's actually a good comparison to Sugar, because I think Sugar is really good in that case. If you've got complex back-end requirements, Sugar is a great fit because the way it's architected, you can create on the fly and create relationships, multiple relationships, different kinds of relationships, custom fields of all sorts of data types, apply the automation to them. So if you've got back-end sophistication requirements, Sugar is a great fit there. I bet we've got questions.
Great, thank you guys. So we have had a bunch of questions come in. We are running short on time, so if we don't get to your questions during this session, we'll make sure to follow up with you personally and make sure that all of your questions are answered. But one question came in from Lindsay. Can you speak to the difference with time-based reporting, how things change over time, how long a deal has been in pipeline stage, et cetera?
Yeah, I'll go first. That's one of the great things about Sugar. Think of a win rate, or how long do we stay in certain opportunity stages? How long are we in qualification? How long are we in negotiation? Take a look at your data. You're going to be able to get that pretty easily with any CRM tool. But what Sugar does is you can say, okay, how do these changes change over time? So how long are we spending in the opportunity stage this quarter versus last quarter versus 2 quarters ago versus 4 versus last year? And you can look at all those opportunity stage velocities, if you will. How are they changing over time? And then how are they changing over time by your cohort? And your cohort could be your sales teams, or it could be an industry. So let's look at how velocity inside a sales stage changes over time, but also by industry, manufacturing or professional services or technology or whatever. So that's what I mean. It's hard to describe in a 30-second soundbite, but it's the difference in how the rate changes over time, also by cohort, and you get to define what the cohort is.
Great.
Right,
Thanks,
and
Kevin.
to add one thing to that too, just to make sure that that's clear. A lot of these are also runtime reports. So I know HubSpot's dashboards are live updating. So you can have those snapshots, but also see in real time where everything is at.
Great. Thanks, Megan. And I think we have time for one more question. Megan, I'll ask you this, and this actually goes back to one of our poll questions, I think, but how do I know if it's time to move to a new solution, or fix the one I have?
I love this question because it just makes me think of the HGTV show, Love It or List It. Do I want to put in the work to love my current solution, or do I want to spend the extra cash to get to where I want all of my requirements to be met? And that's a really complicated one. And it tends to mean that you need some sort of engagement with a consultant that can help you understand the gaps. A lot of times what we do is we say, well, let's take a step back and understand why exactly you want to move. And if it's just because, oh, I don't like the way this looks, or I don't like the way this process is being done, those are the types of things that we can help with a re-implementation. And by re-implementation, meaning adjusting certain processes, start documenting things, take a really good look at current state, and then we can go ahead and decide if we want to fix what we already have, or then replace that solution with something else. Yeah. So it's always a good idea to take a step back first.
I know the answer. The answer is, how do I know? Call BrainSell.
There we go. Yeah, nice plug.
Which actually, so I know there's other questions that have come in that we haven't had a chance to answer. So again, we'll follow up with folks individually. But for everyone that has attended, we are offering a CRM optimization audit. So speaking exactly to what Megan was outlining, but really looking at what are you currently using? What are your processes? What's working? What's not? Identifying opportunities where maybe there's other things that can be leveraged, and then documenting any actionable next steps for you. So we're offering that as a complimentary discussion following this webinar. And again, thank you for joining us. You will see the recording from this webinar in your inbox likely tomorrow morning. And thank you to Megan and Kevin for sharing all of your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Always
Have a
fun.
great rest of the week, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.